of adversity, what was it, 8 of them? No, 7 of them were in our books. Proving holiness, dependence, perseverance, service, fellowship, and relationship were all from our books. I've added identities. I think one of the benefits that we have in adversity is reminding ourselves of whose we are and who we are, and because of whose we are. We have that reality of joy, count it all joy, and the added benefit of joy in the midst of our trials, and as well being able to glean that strength. And where there are times that we go through, I think what I said when we went over that point is, if we didn't have, and I was using the exercise routine, if you didn't have resistance, you wouldn't gain strength. And I think there's a lot of times that we need to have adversity in order to strengthen us. And it has the means of either strengthening us or weakening us. And we just need to be reminding ourselves, here's the benefit of our problem. Here's the benefit of our problems. We can grow through this. We can increase our strength in this. And our strength in our Lord. And tonight we want to look at kind of continuation, so to speak, of 2 Sundays ago in regards to glory. But there is a benefit to our trials in regards to glory. The praise and glory of our God. Can you imagine if we had an opportunity to choose in all of our trials that we faced? Imagine if we went to the doctor and the doctor came in and said, all right, we have a choice here. You could have cancer or you could just have a common cold. Which would you like? Probably most of us, it wouldn't be much of a struggle. Could you imagine if you had the choice when you went up to the boss's office, he would say, all right, you got a choice. I can either fire you or I can promote you. Yeah, that would probably be a pretty quick choice. If there was a way that, that split second before an auto accident, we could have a choice. Do you want to be hurt or somehow get out of this without being hurt? I, again, would imagine most of us would say, if there's a way that we can accomplish it, what is like a half second in front of us without getting hurt, that would be ideal. And ultimately, really for all these benefits, if we could have the choice of our trials, our choice would be that we would avoid it, we would miss it, that it wouldn't happen. That if we had the choice of a trial of cancer or just the temporary aspect of a common cold, we'll bear through the cold as long as we don't have to deal with the cancer. And that can go for all of our decisions. If we had the choice, chances are we would never choose trial. We would never choose adversity. We would never choose, then, in essence, to gain the benefits of those trials. And ultimately, as we look at this one, the glory of God, what a tragedy if we would lose out on the means by which to glorify our God. And I know that there have been times that we've all known people who are good, solid Christians that have faced a trial, and that's the way they handled it. It truly was a testimony of God. And what an honor that was. I think of the Ely's several years ago now and the loss of their son. And to be able to, even their service, the whole point was we want to have the gospel preaching. We want to have as many kids as we can have in attendance, and we want to preach the gospel clearly and solidly, and it was their prayer. Strong desire that would take place, their lives would be changed because of that, even in the midst of losing their child. And it certainly would be the prayer as well for this family as well, the Siemensals. Obviously, a 5-year-old is going to have a different friend circle than a 16-year-old. When there have been many times where there have been those that have gone through great tragedy, and God got the glory. Speaking of Ely, that'll probably be a prayer request praying for Brian. He's certainly not doing well as far as his health goes. But there are many that have gone through great trials, and they felt it. That night when it was quiet and the phone call stopped and the visits were over, that in their mind they realized exactly, certainly what was going through, what they're facing. But their testimony was such that they just had such confidence in their God, even in the midst of this, that God would be glorified. And it's always been a joy to be able to see that kind of testimony take place. That's kind of life being lived out. And what a challenge it is, see God glorified in the midst of a trial, and the impact, the power that has. There are, obviously, in the insurance office, they cater a lot to farmers. We have farmers coming in pretty consistently all the time, and I can't tell you how many times I heard farmers walking down the hallway talking to John Leeser or somebody else, and commenting just about the faith of Brian Ely, and that was evidence from losing his son. And how it amazed them, it surprised them, it kind of shook their own faith in regards to how could he do that? How can he live that? How can he live that way? And what an opportunity we have. An objective of our adversity ultimately should be God's glory. Now, the outline that I have here for this evening is going to be ETA, and a lot of times when we're going through a trial, we want to know the ETA. We want to know the ETA of getting out of this, of getting beyond this. So when will everything go back to normal? And sadly, there are a lot of trials, again, I keep meaning to bring it up, but like the Siebenthal's, there really is no back to that normal that they had before. If you want to know when this thing's going to, at least to a new normal, what's the ETA here? And when our worlds have been turned upside down, what's the ETA? When we go on a trip, a lot of times, especially Josiah, a couple of funny things. Number one, he knows that he shouldn't ask, "Are we there yet?" Because he knows that all he's going to get is, "Does it look like it?" If we're on a trip, and he wants to know if we're home yet. Are we there yet? It's like, does this look like our home, Josiah? No. No, we're not there yet. So his question was on this last trip, are we getting closer? Which we thought was hilarious because, unless you turn around and start going the other way, yes, we are definitely closer. But a lot of times when you're on a trip, you want to know when you're going to get there. And it kind of puts our minds to the end instead of the process of getting there. Now, speaking of our California trip, when we leave at 2:30 in the morning and the ETA on the little Garmin says, 9 o'clock at night that we're getting to our motel, that seems like an ETA that you don't want to. That's just way too much time till he left to get to the end destination. But the ETA of glorifying our God in the midst of trials, and I think this is important. It's kind of a part two that I said of our message from 2 weeks ago from John 17. But to be reminded that glory really is a benefit. It's an objective, certainly, of our trials. Our God will be glorified. And the extent is what we want to look at first, the E, the extent. We know this verse, 1 Corinthians 10:31. It says this, whether therefore you eat or drink or whatsoever you do all to the glory of God. We just take that verse right out of context for what it says. Ultimately, I face a medical dilemma. What should I do? Glorify God. I face a financial dilemma. What should I do? Glorify God. I face a relationship breakdown. I face a job situation. I face a leaky roof or a broken down car or whatever it might be. What is it that we ultimately are to do? What is the extent? What is the E of our ETA in being able to live out the glory of God in my trial? You need to realize that the extent is whatsoever I do all to the glory of God. But let's not skip the context of that familiar verse, verse 31. Let's go back to verse 15. Like ultimately, you have to go all the way back to chapter 1, verse 1. Truly, it's context. But going back to verse 15, it says this. I speak to as wise men, judge ye what I say. And Paul, right off the bat, is challenging them in regards to what is common knowledge. In other words, he's saying to them, hey, this is not something that is so profound that you never thought of this before. I speak to you that you know this already. I just need you to grasp this, live it out, understand the application. The cup of blessing which we bless is not the communion of the blood of Christ. The bread which we break, is it not the communion of the body of Christ? For being many are one bread and one body, for all are partakers of that one bread. There he's speaking of the Christian believers there in regards to communion, in regards to the unity, in regards to the fellowship that we have as one. Behold, Israel after the flesh. Israel after the flesh seems to be those that would have been, at that point, we'd say unbelieving Jews, those that are still caught up into the law. Behold, Israel after the flesh, are they not they which eat of the sacrifices, partakers of the altar? Again, as the unity of the body of Christ, as the unity that we have of Christ, and even the acknowledgement of the shed blood of Christ and the body which is broken for us, that communion, so to speak, that we have with Him and with each other. Israel after the flesh, Israel, still under the law, has that same communion with the law. Verse 19. Here again, he's speaking to wise men. Understand what I'm saying here. What say I then, that the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything? Obviously, the truth is there are no other God besides God. You call it an idol, which it ultimately is, but there is no God behind it. There's no deity behind it. There's no power behind it. Man has created this image with no power, no authority. We only have image, it only has authority of what man has given, that graven, molded image. So there's nothing of the idol, and if you offer a sacrifice to that idol, obviously it's not going to eat it, it's not going to consume it, it's not going to do anything to it, and so nothing has happened to the meat. What did I say then? That the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything? But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that you should have fellowship with devils. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than He? What a question there. Are we bigger than God? All things are lawful for me. Do I have the right, Paul says, to eat whatever I want? Do I have the right to even acknowledge that that's an idol and that it has no power? Do I have rights? Yeah, absolutely. But all things are not expedient. All things are not beneficial. All things are not, what am I trying to say? Encouraging us into our walk. All things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things, here's the word I was looking for, edify not. Let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. Now, obviously in my Bible, the wealth is in italics, which I'm glad for, because that verse in and of itself sounds like it's a very covetous verse. I don't worry about my own wealth. I'm going to worry about the neighbor's wealth. The ESV, I wrote down what it said here somewhere. Where did it go?
I can read it.
Yeah. Well, I know, let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. That's what it is. That kind of gives us a clear understanding. Again, wealth is italicized, so it's kind of helping us understand what is not there in the original. It has that idea of, let us not be focused on my benefit, not just what I want. I want to eat. It doesn't matter if it's been offered that idol or not. I want to eat, so let me eat. I want this, so let me want this, and let me have that. And again, as I kind of mentioned on Sunday, we are definitely moving into a generation that is more I-focused than probably any other generation before in the church. And this verse is saying, hey, it's not, let no man seek his own. It's not about what I want. Not about what I think is fair. It's not about what I think is best for me. But I need to be thinking about what is best for others. How it can be a blessing to them, how it can edify them in their walk. Whatsoever is sold in the shambles that eat, asking no question for constant sake. In other words, as we went up for our anniversary Monday night, and I have to admit I had a nice steak. And as they bought the steak, it's not mine to say, wait, before I cut this, I just need to know, what is the history of the steak? Where has it been? What has it been given to? Hey, you don't go through all that. You don't need to go through all those questions for the context sake. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And that goes back to verse 23. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are expedient. And so you don't make an issue if it's not an issue. But, verse 27 says, if any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Again, here there's an unsaved. What is the chances that an unsaved person is going to be serving meat at a discounted rate because it's offered to an idol first? Pretty high. Pretty high that's going to happen. But again, whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. But, if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, hey man, you wouldn't believe it. I got this meat at half price because it sat in front of the idol for an hour or two first, and then they sold it in the market for half price. And this is a huge blessing. Paul says, yeah, then don't eat that. No, there's no point in eating that. For his sake that showed it, and for conscience sake, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Same statement that is said just previously. Conscience, I say, not thine own. Again, because let no man seek his own. Conscience, not your own conscience here. but the consciences of others who are watching you who just heard, oh, this meat was offered at the idol. I got it for half price. It's a great blessing. Hey, anybody else been there? This is amazing. What kind of meat you can get at this kind of price because it's been hey, don't eat it. Not for your own conscience, because all things are the Lord's. All things are lawful. But for the consciences of others who know what you just heard and now are watching you eat. For why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? For if I by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of for that for which I give thanks? Whether therefore ye eat or drink, or whatsoever ye do, do all to the glory of God. And we really have to go all the way back to where I started, reminding us, we started Paul's argument, I speak to you as life. It's the very reality of the connection that we have. For a child of God, we have a connection within the body of Christ, we have a connection with Christ. There's that union, there's that fellowship. Those Jews that were outside of the church, that were still a part of the law, they had a connection with the law. In that bond, the question is, where is our unity? Where's our bond? Where's our connection? And as I face adversity, as I face trials, what has become evident in my life that it is my connection, that it is my bond. Whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. Make it clear that it began there in verse 16 and 17, my connection, my fellowship with Christ, that it's evident that in all things that I do, that He alone is being glorified. And what it challenges that is continue on verse 32, give none offense neither to the Jews nor to the Gentiles, nor to the church of God, even as I please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but for the profit of many. And here's the clincher, that they may be saved. That here's our objective. Again, it's not about me, but it's about Him, and it's about others. And to be able to have the objective of adversity of glory, His glory, and understanding the extent of it in all that I do. The trial that I face, God's going to get glorified. Circumstances that I'm finding myself in, God needs to be glorified. The extent is that there is no exception clause. There is no, well, except in your case. There is no exceptions for me personally. Everybody else except for you. In all that I do, whatsoever you do, that our God will be glorified. So there's the E. The T, the timing. Another probably familiar passage. Turning over to 1 Peter chapter 1. 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. Wherein you greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptations. Well, let me just stop with Richard asked us already. Remember who the church, who 1 Peter was written to? Really, 1st and 2nd Peter was written to. Okay, ultimately, I mean, they have a whole list there in verse 1, first couple verses, but ultimately it's the persecuted church. It's written to the persecuted church. And speaking in regards to Christ, as it begins there in verse 3, it continues up to verse 6, wherein you greatly rejoice through now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptation. Can I just put in kind of an addendum there, you think? This is the time frame when Christians are being used as lanterns in downtown sections. This is a time frame when it was a sport to see how long a Christian could last against the lions. And these are the words that are said to those that are facing that. This is written to those who have lost dads and brothers and sisters and moms and fathers, sons and daughters. Wherein you greatly rejoice, though now for a season if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptations, that the trial of your faith being much more precious than of gold that perishes, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. Honestly, verses 6 and 7 are verses that I find, there's multiple passages where I think, well, this is nearly impossible to live out. But we're by the grace of God to accomplish what He's called us to do. These are verses that you can't manufacture a pseudo action here. This is genuine. Because the strongest of the strong can't fake this. We'll say it that way. To live this out, it has to be genuinely from the heart. Because to truly go through what they were going through when the very people that Peter is writing to in this very letter. Again, to know that they were facing the constant threat of their own death. And again, going back to the incident today, I can't imagine as a parent having to lose a child. I can't imagine knowing that maybe one thing by the accident, by an incident, but to know that because of my faith and the faith that I have taught my children to have and encourage them to have, is going to cost them their lives. That talk about turning the world upside down. I can't imagine being I'll just say it this way, I can't imagine being a dad in this time frame. And then Peter writes these great encouraging words to me. As I am sitting here thinking to myself at every meal that I have with my family, this might be the very last meal that I am here or they are here. I do not know. Wherein ye greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptations. For just a season. Manifold temptations has the idea that this is pretty extensive, this is pretty big, but that the trial of your faith be much more precious than of gold that perishes. Can you imagine considering weighing kind of in the scale gold, the benefits of gold in contrast to the benefits of death because of my faith, the benefit of the trial that is so heavy that I have the constant reality that someone I know and love could be taken from me and literally could be lighting the streets at night. I can't imagine that. When you put those two, what you're living through in that environment in contrast to a pile of gold, Peter says you need to consider this way. What you are going through now, number one, is just a short term. But in its short term, it is so more valuable than gold, because gold will perish. The benefit of what you're going through will never perish. And I think, again, kind of figure out how the ETA of glory, how is it that as I go through my trial that God can be glorified? You remember, number one, the extent that it's in all things. I remember the extent that I'm not going to be able to live out such a life that God is glorified. In my life, anyway, God will be glorified regardless. His glory does not depend upon me. But by my life, God will not be glorified unless I remember that in whatsoever you do. I need to have the extent, but as well as the timing to realize, I can't think of another T word that had that idea of a contrast. But in the timing and the contrast of the scenario, that what I'm going through is of far greater value than even a lump of gold. That the benefit of the moment of this trial will have greater gain to me than money. Though be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. The timing of God's glory. That have that mindset that it's not just about the here now. It's not just about the circumstances today. It's not just about the manifold temptations of the moment. To be constantly in the mindset that this is something that has the means to glorify Him and benefit me for all eternity. And to be able to live that out. Again, because we live on you could almost say, a linear plane, we could say so to speak. Our time is determined by the seconds, by the minutes, by the hours, by the days, by the weeks, the months. And so our life is kind of like that dash, so to speak, and from beginning to end. And it's easy to get focused on the now, because that's all we can look at. We can look back at the past, but as far as our vision forward goes, it's just still the now. But as we look at the now and the circumstances, the trial, the adversity, and know the timing, it is but just for a season. Our life is yet but just for a season. This trial is then definitely just for a season. I think of the benefit that we could have, much more valuable than even gold, because gold will perish. The gain of this trial, being tried by fire, is something that is eternal. And what an amazing aspect. You get beyond the here, the now, and see the eternity. See our trials as a season, and see the reality of eternity. I think changes our focus completely. The E, the T, and then lastly the A, the amount. And that fits pretty much the same as the extent, but in a little different way. I'll go back to Romans chapter 8. Our third passage here, final passage, Romans chapter 8, 17 and 18. Says it, children, let's talk about just the amazing aspect that we have, the connection that we have with Christ. If children, then heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ, if so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. For I reckon, I love that, for I reckon that the suffering of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Now we have that connection of trials and glory, just as we did in 1 Peter 1, 6 and 7. And ultimately to a point of 1 Corinthians 10 as well. But what is the amount, if I can say it that way, and I don't know if that's the right word, how do you live out the amount of glory that is gained because of, let me say, the amount of benefit that is gained because of the glory of God in our lives? Paul's almost seeming to make it clear that the amount of suffering for today cannot be compared to the amount of glory that should be gained. I have never really been a fan of roller coasters. I don't think it has anything. I have a very strong stomach, so I don't think it has anything to do with about being sick. Honestly, if I were to be honest, I think it has more to do with other people being sick. I've seen too many people come off of roller coasters and lean over the railing. I thought to myself, I don't need to do that. I don't need to be a part of that. If you could guarantee me that it would be a vomit-free ride, I'd probably be very interested in it. But the fact that there could be, I don't need to do that. Stand in a line to watch somebody else vomit, that's not something I need to do. But ultimately, as you can think of a roller coaster and the adrenaline that people get as it goes up, and the roller coaster that I have been on, seems like it's like slower than slow motion as they click their way up this hill, and it's almost like the bigger the hill, the slower it goes. And I don't think it has anything to do with the force that is needed to get it up that hill. I think it just has to do with building of the moment. So, and it literally just has that clicking time. Click, 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 and then it finally gets to the top, and everybody starts hollering, and their arms go up, and then straight down it goes, and around and on, and all this action that goes on. I think what does the ride do for people? How long does the ride last? And what will I gain from this? When I think of how long it takes to get on, you'll stand in. Hey, you got growing up in the Chicago area. Usually there was an annual trip to Great America there in Gurnee, Illinois, and spend a gazillion dollars to stand in line for 2 hours to go on a 30-second ride just never seemed to be something that was all that exciting to me. And I just never thought, this is certainly not. To consider the cost, to consider the weight, to consider the click, 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 compared to what I gained. No. Now, what I did like at Great America when I get talking and joining with the rest of the group was the water rides, because the lines were all for the roller coaster. The water lines, you pretty much walk up, get on it, and you get wet. And there's no click, 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 click. It's just a ride, and you're getting wet, and you're getting soaked, and you're able to get other people soaked, and you get off, and you get right back in line, do it again. And 8 hours of water rides while everybody else is still on the same line awaiting. But, if we could have the reality of the amount in mind, again, so amount and extent kind of seems to be a similar wording there with whatever you do as far as all, but this is almost more of a contrast. The temporary season of 1 Peter 1, 6 and 7, be reminded of the amount of the glory that is gained in the midst of my trial is incomparable. I don't believe that there is a roller coaster. Now, some people I think have this thinking, but it's worth the 2-hour wait to go on that 30-second ride just for the adrenaline rush that you get. Oh, it's so exciting. But what if we had, could you imagine this? What if we had that same kind of response to the trials of our life? I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to go through this. I'm willing to do the line. I'm willing to do the click, 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 click. I'm going to, again, second point, realize that this is only going to last a very short time in my life as far as this trial goes. But to be able to see it as the gain that I get, the gain that God gets, far outweighs the cost of the moment. And maybe we have that mindset as far as the amount goes, incomparable to eternity. The joy of being able to stand before our holy God and hear the words, well done. The joy of being able to say, as Paul did, come the last days of our life, I finished the course. I run the race. I finished the race. And now there's laid up for me that prize, the trophy, the crown. And what a challenge that is to be able to remind ourselves that there is an objective. There's a benefit. There is an objective that we should have, a goal that we should have. And this is our trial, and that is to give God the glory. But in order to do that, here's the ETA of it. We need to know the extent. In all, whatsoever you do, in all things, He is to be glorified. Keep that in our minds. All things, He gets glorified. The timing, just put it for a season. In the moment, it seems insurmountable. And again, I know it's just because it's fresh today. But the Stephenthal, I can guarantee you, are seeing this as a pretty big moment. Their moment, their day has probably come to a complete stop. And just imagine going through what they're going through right now. Their moment of now is something that they cannot see beyond that. They can't see how is tomorrow going to work out. Lord willing, we're taking Caitlin up to Maranatha tomorrow for a medical missions conference summit, I guess they call it. So we already have ideas of tomorrow. Kind of looking forward to that. And right now, in their moment, there isn't a moment besides this moment. Say it that way. Even with a strong faith, just because of just what they're going through, their moment is right now. But to be able to, in that moment, realize it's what for a season, and God can still be glorified in this. And the amount of gain, contrast the adrenaline gain of roller coaster junkie. For us, the amount of gain that is given to my God, if I understand what it is to give out glory to Him in the midst of my trials, is well worth the line, well worth the moments, the now moments that we can't imagine ever getting through. When we understand the amount of glory that is at stake, the connection that we have with our God through this moment, and the glory that He'll gain because of this moment. The ETA of glory. Got a few moments and I'm done. Do we have any questions, comments? For my final trip of the night. That was it. That was the end of my final trip. Let's go to the Lord of prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you again for all that you've done for us. We thank you for trials. But certainly there are times that we face those amazingly difficult situations of our life, of great loss, of great tragedy, of great trying and testing times. I pray that we'd be able to see the ETA of the glory that you can gain in and of our lives if we choose to do so. And I do pray that you would use us, that you would strengthen us, that you would mold us through that fire, that we might be able to live out lives that produce glory and honor to you and you alone. We do pray for the Stephenthals here this very night, and just their hearts. I pray that you give them the grace that they need here this very evening, and the rest that is so necessary as well, even despite their moments. And I just ask that through this that you would indeed be glorified, as we know that you can, and you know that you will. I pray that you'd use them and their lives, their heart, and their focus for you to be used as those instruments to produce a greater benefit, greater end, a greater glory because of this moment. And that we thank you for what you'll do. And for each of our hearts, our lives, as we face circumstances of life, I pray that we be able to live out the same. And that our lives would radiate you in all that we say and all that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.